but welcome. We are excited to have you here with us today for our email marketing best practices for the certified Sentricon specialists. Whether you're looking to fine-tune your current email approach or build a strategy from scratch, this webinar is designed to give you the exact blueprint to turn your everyday inboxes into powerful avenues for business growth. So over the next hour, we're going to do a deep dive into what makes high-performing email performance tick and cover everything from essential deliverability, federal compliance rules, for maximum mobile accessibility, and utilizing generative AI to spark creativity. So as we go through the presentation today, feel free to utilize that Q&A box for any questions that you have, and we'll have some time at the end for Q&A and further discussion. Before we dive in, I'd like to just quickly introduce myself as well as my fellow panelists on today's call. I am Meredith Nystrom, and I'm an account supervisor at Two Rivers Marketing. So my team partners alongside Rachel Wheeler and the Sentricon team on the CSS program, and we help host quarterly educational webinars available for the full CSS network. I've been with Two Rivers for about 2 years, and I have over 11 years of industry experience across numerous sectors of different marketing. Joining me from Two Rivers is my colleague Anne-Marie Notchfish. Anne-Marie is an email marketing automation specialist on the experience and technology team at Two Rivers Marketing. She helps clients develop and execute email marketing and automated journeys that drive engagement, improve customer experiences, and support business growth. With expertise in email best practices and deliverability, she partners with brands to create effective data-driven programs. And we're also joined by Amy Moore. Amy Moore is an email and marketing automation specialist, automation strategy lead based in Indianapolis, Indiana, with extensive experience driving data-informed, customer-centric communication strategies. She's been in the email space exclusively for 15 years, managing retail, home specialties, higher education, and agriculture business. With a strong background in marketing technology and lifecycle automation, Amy partners closely with cross-functional teams to translate business goals into scalable, measurable campaigns. So, quick look at today's agenda before we dive in. We're going to cover email best practices and deliverability. We'll touch on opt-ins and consent, go through high-performing content and send frequency notes, email design and first impressions along with accessibility, reporting and metrics, the use of generative AI, getting started with some lead nurturing. We'll talk through some next steps and final takeaways, and then we'll use the last little bit of this call to go over some resources that you could find in Sentricon Central, and then leave the last little bit for Q&A. I'm going to pass it over to Amy, and she will take us in through the content.
Okay, so as we start today, welcome everybody. I'm super excited to be here. I've been with Corteva 6 years, so I'm very familiar with Sentricon, and let's get started. So why email marketing? Let's just talk about like what most people go through in a daily, like on the daily. So as we look at our inboxes, what do you use it for? You use it mostly like for work, but you also use it for like trying to figure out what's next and everything. So 99% of email users check their inbox almost every day. So I utilize my Corteva inbox for a multitude of things, not just my work email, but I also have some of my most important emails that go into that inbox. So remember, people are checking every day. 59% of respondents say that their email marketing have a direct influence on their ultimate purchasing decisions. So as you're looking at your inbox and you're going through it, you do actually like stop and say, ooh, wait, that's a good idea. And I know more than once I've actually decided on dinner because the Cheesecake Factory has sent me an email that day. So 72% of consumers prefer email as their primary channel for business communication. I am definitely 100% on board with this because I know that when I check my inbox, I've either told them that I want to hear from them, or if I'm on a prospecting list, I know that I'm interested in what they have to say to me. And 9 times out of 10, I'm going to reach out to them just simply because their email's good, or I'm not going to reach out to them because their email didn't speak to me at all. Email allows you to build a measurable line of communication with your audience, not only prospects, but also consumers. So as you're talking to them, think of it as like a telephone call with them and you're trying to reach them, but also know that sometimes they don't see that communication. So you want to make sure that every communication speaks to what your company does. And you want to make sure that they know who you are in every communication. Because remember that even though you go on that journey with that email communication and you're very close to it, they don't necessarily open every one of your emails. So what does it allow you to do though? It allows you to stay on top of that swarm season. So you want to reach out to them and say, "Hey guys, it's heating up. Let's make sure that you have thought through your traps and that everything is in there." It's going to educate on the fact that you guys do colony elimination versus like surface treatment. So you're telling them we are killing the entire colony. We're not just going after like and swatting them down on like an individual yearly basis. Communicate consistency with prospects and consumers over time, and then educate your audience through ongoing content and insight, and nurture leads who may not be ready to buy immediately. So when you think about like that communication to prospects and customers, you do want to make sure that you're communicating with them on a consistent basis. However, your communication strategy for both might be different. So a customer is going to want to hear from you a little more regularly than a prospect. So make sure that like you're reaching out to them maybe with like a monthly newsletter or a bi-monthly newsletter, so every other month. But those prospects you might only want to hit up like maybe 4 times a year. So maybe every 3 months you're hitting them with like a sound reasoning on why they might want to come in. So make sure you're thinking through your two audiences and you're defining them pretty well. So let's talk about deliverability because deliverability is a big thing for email marketing. So you can send as many emails as you want, but if they aren't hitting inboxes, it doesn't do any good for you. So let's talk about the real question. How are you successful at getting your emails into homeowners' inboxes? So what do you need to do to make sure that they are in those inboxes? And how can you do that? Well, you need to make sure that you are working through like a pretty decent bulk mail sender. So if you're using like a Constant Contact or a MailChimp, you might want to look into their deliverability expertise in their site individually. They will tell you what to do for your emails, and they'll also explain to you why you need to do that. Now, I can tell you for a good reason, some of the things that good deliverability leads to is that you will be able to get the leads that you're looking for. You're also going to be able to see your engagement metrics inside of those systems. So if you're not hitting inboxes, you might not see a decent open rate, or you might not see as many click-throughs as what you're expecting. That's because you're not hitting those inboxes. So each individual inbox does different things. And finally, making sure that like your sender reputation is top notch is very important. Make sure that you're explaining what you are as a business and then you're sticking to that, because that sender reputation is super important. You also want to make sure that you are not hitting them daily. So you don't want to overkill a prospect. So you don't want to like go in and say, "Hey, have you thought about this? Oh, by the way, this, and do like a 5-day journey and just send them emails every single day, because that is definitely going to hurt them." That's why I said maybe you want to think about that as like maybe a 4 times per year, and make sure that you're really going out with your best information for why they want termite extermination at their house. So the other thing you want to do is, if you don't know about authentication requirements, so like when you send to like an at Gmail or an Outlook or an at Hotmail, they're going to look for specific things that are inside of your email to make sure that they want it in their inbox and not in a junk folder or spam folder. So make sure that if you don't know what those email requirements are, that you're working with a digital partner that can help you ensure that you are doing your best with those. Now, they do get rather technical, so we're not going to go over them here on the call, but if you have questions, you're more than welcome to reach out to us individually and we will help walk you through that as well. So this is why we do all of this, because there are legal federal requirements and laws that are in effect to protect customers. So talking through the Can-Spam Act and what it means. So how can you make sure that you don't get fined from the federal government, or people aren't being litigious with you? So we did include a link in this. I encourage you guys to go to that and read through it. It does get a little legal, but we're going to talk about why it's important and what you can do to make sure that you aren't hitting this. So don't use false or misleading header information. Your to and from need to be very clear. So a lot of times when I'm sending from Corteva, it says Corteva AgriScience. And then the actual email address is something like marketing@engage.corteva.com. So I'm using the actual company name inside of that. And I'm also making sure it's very clear who is sending that. So you want to make sure for your business you're doing that as well. You don't want to use deceptive subject lines. It's very easy to get caught in like a snazzy subject line that you think is going to like draw a lot of opens, which it definitely will if it hits the inbox. But you also need to make sure that that customer knows exactly what they're going to get when they open the email, because that's going to lead them more in the direction that you want them to go. Inside of that email, you are actually giving them a chance to engage with you as a company. You want to make sure that you're giving them the best chance to engage with you when you do that as possible. You want to tell them where you're located. So every email that you send should have your physical address in the footer or in the bottom of the email. You want to make sure that you actually have where your company is located in that footer, because if you don't, that's one of the things that like inbox placement is looking at. It's looking at that to see if it's a spam, if it's like a spam email or not. The other thing you want to make sure is that you have an unsubscribe link. If you don't have that on there, sometimes it can be rejected by those actual domains. So like gmail.com, outlook.com, and things like that are making sure that you are actually like putting all of the things that you need to put in there. So you do need to have an unsubscribe link. You also need to honor those. So when you get an unsubscribe link, you have 10 days to get it off of your list. We do encourage that you stay inside of that 10 days so that you are compliant with all of the federal guidelines. And also just it keeps your list healthy. So it makes sure that like your list is not going out to people that are not wanting to receive your messages. The other thing that you want to do is you want to make sure that you are being very clear that you are an actual like compliant business. So you want to make sure that you are telling them that you are a business and that you are somebody who is like advertising to them. The final thing I would tell you is that you want to make sure that your reputation is upheld. So if you have anybody doing a third party send for you, or you are working with another company that is sending on your behalf, please make sure that they are doing the things that are responsible to make sure that you stay up to date with your reputation management. So you want to make sure that they're doing all of the things I listed for you. And also you want to make sure that they are not actually trying to be you. So make sure that like they're sending on your behalf. So for example, we use Farm Journal all the time here at Corteva, and Farm Journal sends on our behalf. They would say Farm Journal sending on behalf of Corteva. They would not say they are sending just a Corteva email, that they are Corteva AgriScience. So make sure that you're being very compliant with that as well, because it does hurt your reputation if you don't. So that's all the corporate speak that I have for you. Now for the fun stuff. I'm going to pass it over to Anne Marie, I think, to go ahead and move forward.
Yes. Hi, everyone. I'm Anne Marie, as Meredith introduced me earlier. Um, oh, wait, shoot. Sorry. I think I'm next. Can we go up one more? I think this is still Amy. Okay. Yes, opt-ins and consent. So we want to ensure that contacts have explicitly opted into your marketing communications and emails. Scheduling alone does not really equal marketing permission. So there's two different things here. We'll talk about when opt-in is required and then also when it is not required. So opt-in is required for marketing emails. Those are going to be your promotional or educational messages sent to a group of contacts. Some examples, your newsletters, your promotional offers, educational content, which we'll get into more later, service reminders and product updates, and then when it is not required. So let's say someone fills out a form and they're signing up for an appointment. That is a transactional email. You're responding to a request that they made. So that would not require an opt-in. They don't need to check an opt-in box for you to confirm their appointment or send them a billing receipt, any account updates, all that stuff. So those are very important to keep in mind as we go through this whole webinar. You need to honor your opt-ins, and if someone is not opted in, then you need to not be communicating to them in the form of those newsletters, promotional offers, all those things on the bottom left there. So this is just an example we wanted to add in for obtaining opt-ins. So a lot of questions, or a lot of times I get asked, how can I get opt-ins, or how are we getting people to get into our emails? So a website contact form is a great place to implement this. You probably likely already have this somewhere on your website, whether that's scheduling an appointment or just like a general contact form. You can actually add a little opt-in box there at the bottom saying that be very explicit with your language and make sure to work with your legal team too to make sure that you're compliant, but saying, I would like to subscribe to marketing communications, they check that box, and then you will now be able to send them your newsletters, promotional stuff, all those things on the bottom left of the last slide. Okay, and now we're going to be getting into kind of the meat of your emails. So two things we're going to cover here are after we've covered consent and list building fundamentals, I should say, we're going to talk about some of the biggest mistakes people make. So when you're thinking about email, you don't want to focus too much on what you want to say to someone, but more rather what your reader wants to hear, right? So the most effective email programs consistently deliver value before asking for that action, before asking for you to sign up for something or contact us, all that stuff. So on this slide here, we kind of have three different pillars that we've identified for content that we think would work well. Starting with that educational topics like why eliminating the queen matters, how termite colonies spread, and how the Sentricon system differs from traditional treatment are valuable because they answer questions homeowners might not even realize they have, really. Another strong category there on that far right, you'll see preventative, why you shouldn't wait until visible damage, why ongoing monitoring protects your investment. This is a strong category because everyone wants to protect their investment. Their home is a huge investment. So content explaining why you shouldn't wait is really going to resonate with someone who's like, yes, I love my house. I don't want anything horrible to happen to my house. I don't want termites in my house. So that's the reasoning behind the preventative there. And then the value reinforcement. This is a really good one. I think it can be implemented in every email that you're sending, your value that you're providing. But homeowners may not realize the training, the expertise, the specialized knowledge that comes with that. So these value emails can help differentiate your business from competitors and also reinforce why professional termite management is worth the investment. So you're showing them your value, and it's also a really good place to just prove your business, prove your value to them. You want to think about every email from the homeowner's perspective. So a good gauge here is asking yourself, would this help me better understand? And if the answer is yes, that's like a good candidate for an email to send. But if you're thinking about that email and you're like, well, I really want to get that out there, maybe reconsider how to add in some educational content or add in a value reinforcement with that. And then here we have send frequency, which Amy talked about a little bit above too. But we would say the sweet spot is going to be that 1 to 2 times a month. So think about your newsletter, whether that's monthly, bi-monthly. This is a big question, like how often should I send emails? There's that sweet spot, but then there's also the flip end of this, which is not sending enough. So you don't want to go too long without sending an email because your readers, your list, they might forget about you. We don't want to think that anyone would ever forget about us. But if you're not in contact with them enough, they might be more likely to mark you as spam. They might be more likely to unsubscribe. They've lost interest. So typically you wouldn't want to go more than 45 days without communicating with that list. That being said, depending on the list or the segment, that might differentiate on what you need to communicate with them, but just like a good rule of thumb there. And then also you could increase send frequency for certain things. So for example, during termite swarm season, let's say, or like another seasonal activity period, sending weekly emails could be more effective there because the information is super timely and relevant. And then if you are doing that though, make sure you're keeping a close eye on, your unsubscribes, your bounces. If your CTR, your clicks shoot down, that's not a good sign. We might want to roll that back a little bit. But yeah, there are times when you can do more. So that's a little bit confusing. If you have any questions on the QA, this is a great section because we go from saying, don't send too much, don't send too little. There's a good middle spot. All right. And then email design, first impressions, and accessibility. This is something that we talk about a lot here at the agency. It's something I really love to dive into, so super excited for this section. But think about it this way, even the best email will probably fail if it's difficult to read or even visually overwhelming. Email design has changed significantly over the past several years, and I think a lot of this could probably attribute to the crowdedness of an inbox, right? You're getting so many emails from so many brands. Excuse me. So today's best performing emails are typically clear, they're a little more simpler, and they're easier to scan. We're really thinking about people scanning our emails versus reading every single word. Most recipients are also viewing emails more on their mobile devices and making like split-second decisions whether they need to continue reading. So you can think about your own inbox habits. I know I'm guilty of this. I'll open an email and I'll look at some pictures and see if I'm interested, or if the subject line calls out to me, then I'll continue reading. But you can think about your customers that way too. They're making split-second decisions because they have to, because inboxes are so overly crowded. So in terms of design, that means that every design decision should help recipients quickly understand the purpose of the email. We're using that single column layout or the clear hierarchy, the bold headlines to pull their eyes through and hopefully straight to that high contrast CTA button. And one thing, sorry, will we go back on the other slide? One thing too on this slide, the 5-second rule. So this is like a good gauge too for your design. If someone opens your email, within 5 seconds, do you feel like they could understand the purpose of your email? And if so, they might ignore it. So I talked a lot about making sure it's like scannable and easy to read. That 5-second rule is a good gauge there to help you understand your email design. Okay, sorry, go ahead. Okay, the anatomy of an email. So what should my email look like? Here we just have a little example. We have a bold headline at the top. So that would be your biggest topic for this email should always be at the top. We have our single column, so you can see that text just drags your eyes through right to that big button at the bottom there. And also you'll notice how that button has big text, super high contrast. I don't have to struggle to read the text on that. If this was on mobile, I hopefully wouldn't have to struggle to click on anything. It's big enough. Another good thing you can do here is add in some bullet points. So if they're not going to read that middle text, which they very well might not, those bullet points might stick out and you can pull out your big points and bullets rather than just long drawn out paragraphs. And then also you'll notice there, we have a footer and she's compliant. Keeping those scan spam guidelines in mind. Okay, first impressions. So when we think about our email, you might think just about the email itself, the design, your pictures, but really there are other things that people are looking at before they're even opening your email. So there's 3 critical elements I want to talk about here. We have sender name, subject line, and pre-header text. The sender name is often the first thing people notice. So consistency build trust, like Amy mentioned before, sending from Corteva, we're not using a generic email address or your mom's name as the from name or something like that. A brand name that they'll trust, that's going to appear a lot more professional and provide consistency as they're opening your emails moving forward. Next, our subject line. So a lot of people try to be kind of clever here, but really clarity wins. Instead of vague phrases like important update, you want to tell them exactly what they're going to gain from opening an email. For example, a subject line about swarm season immediately communicates, what's happening in that email. I don't have to necessarily open it and be confused when I'm opening. I know that email is going to be about swarm season. The pre-header text is often overlooked. It should really support your subject line and add that context. That little iPhone down here is going to kind of show you an example of what people might see before they even get to your email. So you want all those things to be thought through and not just left blank or, too vague. I really like these examples down here too, like important update about what? Not just important update, but your annual inspection is due. Schedule that in 60 seconds. So I know that this email is about my annual inspection. The fact that it says it's due makes me think that it's urgent. And then I can do something about that in 60 seconds. So that's a really great example to pull into your own strategy as well. All right, and accessibility. When emails are easier to read and easier to navigate, easier to interact with, your engagement could typically improve across your audience. So we can start with font size here. That middle button, the learn more is so small, and depending on how you're looking at this, you might not even be able to read that it says learn more. So larger fonts are great, not only for eyes on desktop. I have horrible eyes, so I prefer a large font, but also on mobile devices. So this button on a mobile device might be so small, you can't read it. And if you can't read your CTA, you're probably not going to click on it. And there's also the thought process of here accessibility. We should be creating things for users with low vision, and also our mobile folks. Simplified color schemes also help improve readability. So that top button there, the dark, or I wouldn't say that's the dark green, the middle green and the white text, that really sticks out more than that bottom one. That dark green and the black text, I just can't really, it doesn't stick out to me. My eyes aren't going to be drawn to that in terms of taking a next step. Another big thing that we talk about here at the agency too with accessibility is images. So around half of B2B inboxes actually have their images turned off. So that would mean when they open your email, they might not see the email, they might just see the alt text. So making sure that you're having good descriptive alt text, and then also putting your important text in the body copy versus on an image. So again, if I have my big call to action in my header image and then someone doesn't have their images turned on, they're going to completely miss that information. So making sure your key information is communicated through your live text. And then also remember, they're multitasking, they're scanning. So that clear design really makes it easier for them to engage regardless of the device or where they're reading the email. And then that's just an added benefit that accessibility, it's not just compliance, it's really good marketing. So it's twofold there on accessibility. All right, reporting and metrics, everyone's favorites. One of email's greatest advantages is that nearly everything can be measured. And unlike some other marketing channels, email gives us direct visibility into audience engagement. So the key focus is on the metrics that actually matter. A lot of people get overwhelmed by reporting dashboards, and that's totally understandable because there are so many things that you can track. But the good news is that you don't need dozens of metrics to make these informed decisions, right? The goal isn't just collect as much data as you can, like a squirrel for the winter, right? The goal is to use it to improve your future communication. So when you're looking at your email performance, you want to start with, we lay out 4 core metrics here: your email sent, your delivered, your click-through rate, your bounce rate. I would also add that unsubscribe rate is super important. If you send out an email and you get a lot of unsubscribes, something might have happened there, something didn't resonate, whether it was the time of day it was sent or the content. You can do some further testing there, but unsubscribe rate is also a great thing to keep track of. And also note that these metrics can reveal trends over time. So if you went into where you send your emails now and you look and you're like, great, my click-through rate is 2%. Maybe look at that more over time to get a better holistic view of your emails and your audiences. Again, most important thing is consistency. Track them regularly and look for patterns rather than, look at one email and, okay, I have a click-through rate of 2% on this one email. How did the whole campaign do? And then also, after you do your send, it's super important to keep an eye on those metrics. So not just before, but after, like we talked about earlier with the unsubscribes, making sure that you honor those opt-outs, making sure that you monitor your bounce rate so that you have good list health. And this matters because not honoring these can affect your sender reputation. You should think of your sender reputation kind of like your credit score. And I'm going to sound like my mom here, but you don't want bad credit. We really want to keep that in check and make sure that we are compliant, not getting a lot of complaints, spam complaints. And this will help your deliverability and your overall email strategy too. So getting started with lead nurturing. This is one of the most valuable uses, I would say, of email. You really get this great connection with your audience where you can nurture them through the process of the buy. Not every prospect is going to be ready to purchase the moment they first engage with your business, obviously. So lead nurturing helps you stay connected and then continue to educate them and build trust, and also build up your own brand too. So a simple nurture program, it doesn't need to be complicated, doesn't need to be scary. We can start with some educational emails delivered over several weeks. So, and that's after they've opted in, because we love opt-ins, they're very important. But these are some topics that you could include. We have colony elimination versus surface treatment, the value of prevention, and how monitoring protects a home over time. These emails will establish your credibility and answer those questions they might not know that they had. And then as you get that engagement, you can kind of introduce your action-oriented messages. So that's going to be your schedule your inspection, your promotional offers, request a quote. So hopefully the goal behind this approach would be that you feel more helpful and like an expert they can trust, rather than pushy, take the next steps right off the bat when they might be needing a little more time to learn more. Okay, I think this is our last one too, sad. We have generative AI. I'm sure no one's heard of generative AI. I'm kidding. It's a big buzzword right now. Everything is AI. So obviously we wanted to include a section on that here. So artificial intelligence, as it's becoming increasingly useful, we do want to keep a few things in mind. It can accelerate like your content creation. So, you're not starting from a blank page and struggling in your mind to get started, but it's really important to think of it more as an assistant and like not a replacement for your strategy or your expertise, because you are still the expert here. AI is very smart, but it can make mistakes. I'm sure everyone here has had an example with asking an AI to do something and it gives you something completely opposite. So a few practical ways you can use AI like today would be, maybe you have it brainstorm some subject lines. It'll quickly give you a bunch of options, but again, refine those, test those. You could have it draft some of your educational emails. So instead of starting from that blank page like we just talked about, you can use AI to create that initial draft, and then make sure you're customizing it for your audience. A lot of that content will be pretty general, but you know your audience and you know your business. So it needs to be customized to you and your audience to be relevant to them. If they're getting a bunch of like just generic educational emails, it might not land very well there. Third is creating seasonal reminders. So that could be tied to storm season, inspections, weather events, preventive maintenance, kind of those pillars we talked about earlier. The real value here is going to be the speed and the idea generation, but accuracy should always be your most important thought when using AI, and make sure you're reviewing those outputs. And our next steps. So I've just thrown a lot of information at you. I'm sure you got it all. But just in case that was a lot of info and you need some concrete next steps, we laid out a few things here that you could take home today to your strategy. One is going to be note your current open and click-through rates today, so you have a baseline. So maybe you're right at that 2 to 3% across your strategy, and that's great. And maybe you can work to improve it, or maybe you're a little low. So taking note of where you're at now. Remove any hard bounces or unsubscribes from your email list. I think we've really hounded in on how important that is for your deliverability and just getting conversions too. If you have a list of an old list or a bunch of bounces or unsubscribes, you're probably not going to get the result that you really want there. QA your current template for accessibility. So thinking about that visual layout we talked about earlier with the big headline, the buttons, make sure your buttons are mobile friendly. You have alt text on your images, all those important things there. You should ensure your email footer includes that physical address, privacy policy, and unsubscribe link. That is important for deliverability, but also for being compliant. We talked about that earlier. That's super important. So that's a really good one to take away. And then finally, identify one gap in your communication. So looking at your current email strategy, is there anywhere you could fit in a nurture email? Or if you already have a nurture email, maybe look at those nurture emails and make sure that that content is really for your audience and not just for, like we talked about earlier, telling your reader what you want to say versus what they might need to hear. So really taking a look at your current strategy and getting a gap out of that and something to improve. And then final takeaways, really just kind of a wrap up of a few things we've talked about, but I'm sure you've heard enough of me. So I'm going to pass it over to Meredith, and we're going to go over some helpful resources.
Yep. So I think we hit on some of these, sending valuable educational content. There are also some email assets available on Sentricon Central, so we'll touch on those in a moment. making sure that we're designing for clarity and mobile, very important. You know, mobile is huge. Monitor those key metrics consistently, and ultimately, you know, use your email nurturing to help stay top of mind, cross-sell, and increase retention. So now, as I mentioned at the top of the call, there are some resources that we want to make sure everyone is aware of via Sentricon Central. So we'll spend the next couple of minutes going over some of those new resources and assets available to you now. So we have three main areas of support. We have bucketed them into content, ideas, creative assets, and templates, digital best practice guides, and then local listings management support, which I'll touch on in a bit. So first, just starting with content overall, I like to point out this first resource as a guide, but we created a 2026 content planning calendar that you can see goes month by month. We have a snapshot of the back half of the year here. Each month outlines what we've dubbed some marketing priorities, as well as some topics and any applicable tactics that we've created that you can use in tangent with your current marketing plan. So a lot of Sentricon content in there. To access this content planning calendar, as well as anything that we cite in this presentation today, you can just go to Sentricon Central, scroll down, view the tab is labeled Marketing Resources for Certified Sentricon Specialists. And then you can download the content planning calendar for reference. And with this one, like I mentioned, you want to just use it compared to what you have planned currently with your 2026 marketing or termite control. So use those topics, leverage any assets you need throughout the year, but we're going to focus on what's new for June and July up next. So for June, have some things here around identifying infestations, some topics. I won't go through each one. We know we're kind of at the tail end of swarm season, so really want to make sure all those tactics for consideration are heavy in use: search ads, Google paid display ads, paid social ads, SMS, which we have some upcoming assets available for you to use as well, and some emails. We just talked through the great importance of using email in marketing. And then July, kind of shifting focus to termite threat awareness and prevention. So we have some fun social for you to pick up, as well as some curative versus prevention, kind of figuring out which method is best. And then want to focus on always on and email for those tactics and considerations. So pivoting a bit to look at those creative assets that are now available for June and July. We've created this DIY versus Sentricon system comparison chart. So this is really great. It's a PDF graphic. You can use it in a myriad of different ways. You can put it on your site, termite control landing page. You can print it off as a leave behind. You can put it on social just for people to quickly be able to compare and contrast between, but that resource is available. And then to the right, we have a Freedom from Termites social carousel. So you can see the graphics here. It is intended to live like a Meta or an Instagram carousel with some really fun images going into the holiday, the end of next week. And there's also social copy with this. So if you want to use it on your social channels, that is all packaged up and available on Sentricon Central. And then just to note, some of these assets are more general, but still available on Sentricon Central for your use. We do have every door direct mail mailer option for customization and co-branding. There's some meta ads that are a little bit more agnostic, but available for pickup and use. Performance Max ads, as well as Google Business Post. There's some display assets, and then there is an SEM campaign keyword template for you to go in and use. And then, as I mentioned, we also have these weather-triggered email and SMS assets. So really great to utilize, especially in the warmer months for summer. And we just talked through the great importance of email and keeping things top of mind. So those are available as well. Digital best practice guides. So these are up and available for download. We have a couple for social media, Performance Max, SEM, website best practices, and then coming soon, today, there'll be an email best practice guide uploaded as well. So to use those, we suggest just visiting Sentricon Central. Again, they all live in the same marketing resources for certified Sentricon specialist area. Downloading those guides and then working with whomever, either your internal marketing team or an agency team, to help implement those suggestions into your plans. So great for implementation now as we look at the last remaining 6 months of this year, or as you're starting to think about what your 2027 marketing plans should look like. Just a great aid to have in your back pocket. Like I mentioned, on the heels of this webinar, this email best practice guide will be uploaded soon into Sentricon Central, kind of just giving a recap of everything that we talked about today. If you want to go back and reference anything, just a great resource to have this all into a guide. And now I'm going to quickly just touch on the local listings program that we have outlined in partnership with our agency, Two Rivers Marketing. So local listings management, a great resource. We really highly recommend everybody having some type of program in place. So as a benefit to being a CSS and being in Sentricon's network, you have the opportunity to enroll into our program for this year that is managed by Two Rivers Marketing at a reduced group rate. So Sentricon is supporting CSSs participating in this program and is committed to the CSSs having success via local listings. So local listings, it's a really critical role in having accurate, complete, and consistent listings in driving SEO and leads and sales at the local level. So we know it can be really challenging, though, to manage a listing system, and it's often a very time-consuming and intensive process. So if your team is looking to alleviate some of that and get some time back, that is where we, Two Rivers, can help support in getting that time off your plate back into your business and helping keep oversight of those listings as managed. And then just to touch on this here, as more customers are using AI-powered tools like ChatGPT, Google Gemini, Perplexity to find local businesses, we definitely want to make sure that your location remains visible and accurately represented in these experiences. So these platforms really rely on structured, consistent business data, along with signals like reviews and web presence to generate local recommendations. So at no extra cost, this listings management program really makes sure to keep your CSS locations top of mind and also within their organic results. So something to consider. We also will offer quarterly reporting if that is something that you're interested in. So this QR code will take you to a form for enrollment. And if you have any questions, definitely follow up with Rachel or anyone at Two Rivers post-call. We're happy to discuss anything further. And I believe my next slide also has costs. So costs do vary, but like I mentioned, the opportunity here is we are able to offer a reduced group rate with our partnership. So by enrolling, you can get a sense of, if you are interested in enrolling 1 to 2 locations, what that cost would be. It does reduce with the increase of locations. So if you're looking to do 6 or more, you get the real benefit there, but we're happy to take any and all locations that need support. Same QR code on this slide that will take you to that enrollment form. All right, so now the last little bit of this call, we have some time for some Q&A questions for anything we discussed today pertaining to email or any of the resources that I went through, if you would like more information or have any other questions. Okay, starting us off, what mobile design best practices have the most impact on click-through rates?
I'll take that one. So kind of the same thing we talked about earlier, but really that single column layout, our large CTA buttons, they call them thumb-friendly buttons, keeping your message and your CTA above the fold. So when you're thinking about opening an email on mobile, a lot of things get pushed down because your screen goes smaller. So keeping your button high up, because we don't get guaranteed that anyone gets to the bottom of our email. So making sure your button is as high as possible for that. And then you can reduce heavy visuals. So like we talked about, making sure that your live text is in actual text, not just on the image. But also, if you have really large images, that could struggle to load and slow down your email. So making sure that if you're using visuals, that they are of a good size and they're not pushing all of your content really far down in the email. Amy, do you have anything you want to add to that? Sorry if I took that from you.
No, no, that was good.
Okay, in regard to email design, what are some mistakes that you see marketers make? How can we avoid those?
Gosh. Are you all right if I take that one too, Amy?
You can. I would say what you talked about images, like a lot of people do like image-based emails, which is great for like a retail, but when you're looking at like a true like business to consumer with like a definitely like a home, I worked in home securities. So when you're looking at that kind of thing, you don't want to do large images. So don't do an image-based because like Anne Marie said, like people are gonna open it without their images on, and it's just going to be a blank email basically that's going out to them. So just make sure that you are using like your actual live text inside of emails.
Another thing I saw recently, I talked about high contrast, and high contrast is important, but there's also the other side that's too much contrast. So it was just they had a lot of a really content heavy email, and it was like a dark navy blue and then a dark green. It was alternating, and so just to the eye, it wasn't really pulling you through the CTA because the colors were so distracting. So making sure you're keeping in mind that simple layout we talked about. The design is great and it's fun to do cool things like that, but really thinking about, is this going to get them to my CTA, and are they going to be able to read the content and know right away what this is about?
Okay, what about benchmarks? What benchmarks should we use to evaluate email performance
I'll,
in
t-
26? Yeah, Amy, you want to take that
I'll
one?
happily take this one. I would say like, and Anne Marie, I'm sure you have stuff to add too. So for benchmarks, for me, it's really important not only to look at industry benchmarks, but you also want to look, and you can find those online. You can like search for them and find what your interest, like your industry benchmarks would be. But you also want to look at your year to year. So in all honesty, you want to look at like how you're performing against your emails or how you're performing against what you've done previously. So make sure that you're looking year to year to actually gauge because like your benchmark might be higher than those averages even. So if you're only ever looking at the averages for your industry and you're above those, then you're not really looking at how you're performing. Anne Marie, I'll pass it over to you for anything else you might want to
Yeah,
add.
100% agree with that. And in terms of like which, if you're wondering which metric, like CTR is a big one. I feel like that's what I really focus on across my reporting. So looking at your CTR for, like Amy said, your industry is super important. Getting that benchmark and then looking at it holistically, like she said too. You can look at one email and one email can perform really well, but that's not necessarily a great view of your email health.
All right. Well, that takes care of everything that we had today. Please reach out if any questions come up. I'm sure Rachel will be happy to answer or redirect our way. And thank you so much for joining us today.